All right, Rachel. So you have a book out called Shadow Stained. Is that right?
Yeah, I do, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So Shadow Stained is my debut novel. I launched it back in April, and it's been one hell of a ride. It's an adult dark fantasy and the first in the Stones of Power series. So it's told from the point of view of two protagonists. We've got Ruby, who inherits this necklace from her grandma after she dies. And then we've got Dravax, who is a demon, who sees the necklace for what it really is, and that's the Stone of Life, which the Lapis Vitae, which can grant a demon immortality. So he sets his sight on the Lapis Vitae. But there are two complications, and one is that the Lapis Vitae protects the owner from all malicious harm and intent. He cannot kill her, he cannot steal it from her. So the book starts when he's trying to win her trust the hard way, and it's a bit of psychological warfare going on. It gets a bit messy, and then other demons get wind of this necklace, and it becomes a bit of a tug of war. And poor Ruby is stuck in the middle a bit there, but it's the scale just kind of gets bigger and bigger then.
That's really interesting. I personally love a good demon story. That probably sounds really weird, but I love the paranormal and reading stories about demons and stuff like that. And I love that your book has not only action scenes but also psychological action where you can actually see how the conflicts of the book are affecting the characters, and I think that's probably my favorite part of it.
Yeah, Ruby and Dravax are essentially their enemies. They're the predator and prey. Um, but it starts off that way, and then they start to get under each other's skin, and it becomes a little bit more complicated. Um, for Dravax in particular, I think he goes through quite the transformation, and he doesn't like what's going on. It's kind of being dragged as opposed to being willing. But it just makes things a lot more complicated because he's very driven and focused, and his main focus is just to get as much power as he possibly can. And at every turn, Ruby is thwarting him.
Gotcha. So when you were writing this, did you create an outline for it, or did you just kind of start with an idea and free write the whole thing?
It started as little snippets, conversations that I couldn't get out of my head. Just there were characters, I didn't know who they were, but I wanted to know who they were. So I started to write down as a form of therapy. Really, I wasn't in a very good place when I started writing Shadow Stained. But slowly over time, I began to pour all of my negative feelings and everything that I was going through into what became Shadow Stained. And the at the time I got to the end of the first draft, it almost felt like a purge, you know. And that's when I thought maybe I can actually publish this. So I scrapped it and I rewrote it with the base story in line in mind, and just went from there.
That is awesome. I think that writing is one of the most beneficial ways that you can really get through different conflicts in life, because you can you can write everything down, get it out of your head. You feel that kind of weight lift off of you as everything goes onto the paper. And that I think a lot of writers start out as like journaling in the beginning, and I think that really helps kind of work through a lot of different things, just for everybody, and then for writers as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
So when you had first started writing, you were working through some stuff. Did you write every day? Did you just kind of write when you felt like it? What was your schedule like when you first started writing?
I wasn't writing every day to begin with, but I found that the further I got into the book, the more I wanted to write every day. And then when I went whole days without writing, I would become a bit pent up and stressed. And the only way I could relieve that was by sitting at the laptop and just, escaping, having a good writing session. And still to this day, if I go a few days without writing, I really know that I have. It seems to be my one constant outlet. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do try these days to write every day.
Yeah, and I think there's a quote that goes, "Write until not writing makes you anxious," and I think that that I've
Yeah.
always taken a lot of stock into that because once you get into a habit of writing, it's hard to stop. It's hard to take a whole day off because you're used to that process. It becomes a part of
Yeah.
you. Now, when you were in the revision process and you were making this into a story, did you give yourself deadlines on when you wanted to have certain things done? Like after you decided it was something you wanted to publish, what were your steps from there?
Um, so when I first started writing, I didn't really know what I was doing. It was such a messy process, and that first draft, it was literally just a mind dump. It didn't make any sense. So when I came to revising it, it took a lot longer because I had to reorder that. I actually went and I invested in a course, a revision course, and I through that course I learned how to effectively revise a book, and yeah, that was. I think it's a steep learning curve, especially when you're first starting out, and there's a lot of advice floating out there, but it's not all necessarily advice that's going to work for you.
Absolutely, and that's actually the whole purpose of me doing this interview series is to show other writers that every writer does it differently. And that yes, there is a lot of advice out there, but you have to figure out what works best for you. Maybe one writer's process isn't going to work for you, but you kind of start with a baseline of story structure and you have to your own process from there. If you try to use another writer's whole structure and it doesn't work for you, a lot of writers can get discouraged thinking that they're not good at it or something like that. And it's not that at all. They just have to kind of practice and play around with things and really figure out what the best process is for their writing style. And I love the fact that that you that you took the course, the writing course, when you were starting the revision process. I think that there are so many of those out there that really just focus on the basics and give you that foundation of story structure to work off of. And I encourage all writers to start with those because they are fundamentally important. So what would you say as far as the writing process, what was the most difficult for you?
Um, I would say that the first draft is always the hardest for me. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship, to be honest, because it's also the most freeing part of the book. And as drafts go on, those boundaries get tighter and tighter, and you've got to work within those. But also having that much freedom and pulling what is effectively a complete story from your head and putting it down is the hardest for me, I think. I often beat myself up when I can't get the words out. So that's not fun. But then I'll have days where I can't stop them. So I think that's a bit frustrating for me, not being able to be consistent. But it's also the fun part, I suppose, the discovery.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly, having it be a love-hate relationship doing that first draft. It really is because It is. It's the most freeing. It's the most wonderful feeling to start getting that rough draft out there. But at the same time, it's like if you can't find the right words that you want, or you just can't figure out how to get that image in your head onto the paper, it can be really frustrating. So love hate relationship is the best way of describing writing a rough draft.
Oh, do you know, I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and it's really bad because I wish I could just do the crappy first draft, get it all down. But I'm thinking, well, I really need this to work for me before I can move on. And in some ways, you know, that can hold you back. But I am working on it. I think I'm better this time around with my second book than I was my first.
And I've heard a lot of that from writers, is that, and in me particularly, I am a perfectionist as well. So when I write that first draft, I tend to stop and try to edit and revise as I go, and that's what really holds me back as a writer, because I'm trying to do three different steps of the process at one time, and
Yep.
I yeah, I need to just focus on the draft and getting everything out. But I do that, and then I go back, and then I'm like, no, maybe I want to change this, or no, that's not right. I can reword this, and then I never get anywhere. So
Sympathize. Yep.
yeah, yeah, it really takes a lot of a lot of different mindsets when it comes to writing a book, because you need a different mindset for each different step of the writing process. And for me, when I try to write my first draft and revise at the same time, I get very confused, because those are two very different mindsets.
Yes.
So now that you're writing your second book, how does your schedule differ from how you're writing the first one? Are you starting with more of an outline or a story structure with your second book, or how is it different from the first?
Um, I suppose I'm going into it with more of an idea, not only of what I'm doing, but of the story. I've got plot lines that I need to continue with, and subplots and threads. So I do have a solid bare bones plan going in, which I didn't for Shadow Stones, which is, I think it's quite comforting actually, having that framework there. Um, I don't like to know everything. I like the characters to kind of show me, and if that's a discovery process for me as well. But at the same time, I don't like writing blind. So I suppose I want the cities, but I don't want the stops in between, if you know what I mean. And it's about finding that
Yeah.
fine balance, I think.
Yeah, and again, every writer does it differently, and it also differs between each book that you're writing. I have one book where I have a very, very detailed outline that I'm using, but I have another book where I'm just like, okay, I have my major plot points, and now I just kind of want to see what happens. There's a lot of writers who say that they have to know the ending before they start writing, and then there's other writers who say they don't want to know the ending. They just want the characters to kind of figure it out for themselves. So it's a lot. It's a lot of different writing styles out there, and it's going to differ not only from writer to writer, but from book to book.
Exactly. Yes.
So do you have a specific place where you write? Do you have an office? How do you make sure that you have kind of that uninterrupted space to focus on writing?
So I don't have a specific writing room. When we first moved into this house, it was going to be the spare room, and there's a desk in there, and it's just covered in junk. I never got around to clearing it out. But sometimes I write in the conservatory. It's when it's sunny and nice. I like to watch the birds, and I'm half concentrating on writing, and my mind can wander a bit. Uh, and then I suppose when it gets colder, I just move around the house a bit. Um, I'd like to have a dedicated space because I'm easily distracted. So it would be nice to find somewhere I can just knuckle down and focus. But I do what I can where I can.
Yeah, sometimes when you don't have that one specific place to write, it really just it's a place where you go in your mind when you start to write and you really get into that zone. And when you you know, it's I don't have that specific writing space either. So I'm either at the dinner table or I'm outside or I go to a coffee shop or something, and you really have to be able to block out all those distractions mentally to be able to focus on your book. And it takes a lot of practice to do that.
Yes.
So what are your goals as a writer? You have your second book that you're working on, but do you have like book signings coming up, or do you have specific goals, different awards or different bestsellers list goals that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I suppose I'm still learning how to balance writing with marketing and with every other thing. That's a new experience for me. Um, I am hoping to break into libraries and physical bookstores this year. That would be nice. I think those are my main goals. It's a bit difficult under the current circumstances, but just doing the best that we can. As it stands here, all of the bookstores are closed, but that's definitely one for the future.
Yeah, COVID has definitely changed the way a lot of things work. And I think that even when we can't do traditional events like book signings and things like that, there's so many virtual options out there. I mean, just doing interviews like these where we can talk, have a chance to talk about our work, it definitely can go a long way in times like these when everything is still kind of shut down and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm very thankful for being able to do things virtually, even when we can't get out there and meet people face to face. So,
Yes, I think as you say, everything seems to be virtual these days, and that's amazing. You don't necessarily need to even leave your house.
yeah, right. Exactly. I don't think I leave the house all that often, to be honest with you. I go to the store and that's pretty much it. Everything else I can do right from my computer, including write. So makes me happy.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice out there for aspiring writers who are just starting out?
Yeah, I suppose I would ditch the word aspiring. If you're writing on a regular basis, I would say call yourself a writer, you know, um, and write not just when the mood takes you, but when you're not feeling inspired, for the sake of writing. And I think that's how you learn how to write, not just when you want to, but when you need to. Uh, yeah, I think that's my main takeaway, really.
Absolutely. And I think that something something you said really hits home for me is that you said to write even when you're not inspired. I think that when you are when you're a writer, you really need to get into the habit of writing. And if you're writing every day, you're not going to be inspired every day. You may not be in the mood to write every day, but to be able to write through those emotions and write through that writer's block can ultimately make you a much stronger writer because you learn how to write through difficult mental times, not just physical times. And I think that can go a long way for your writing. And I think on the days where I'm not inspired, I tend to use different writing prompts. So if I'm not really in the mood to work on one of my books that I'm in the process of writing, but I still need to write just to get myself into the habit and back into the writing process, I'll pick a writing prompt and just kind of start from there.
Yeah. I think these past couple of months I've not really been inspired that much at all. But it's well, once I got down to it and I started, sometimes the words would flow, other times just a couple of hundred words, and I tried.
And that happens. I mean, every day
Yeah.
is different and every book is different and it's going to require different versions of yourself as a writer, in order to do each different step of the process. And I think that we all kind of have to be patient with ourselves, especially during this time. I mean, we're all living in a time that we never have before, with everything that COVID has changed, and being kind of stuck in the house 24/7
Mm,
can definitely affect our inspiration a bit. So definitely
do.
learning how to write every day despite not having that inspiration goes a long way in building yourself up as a writer.
Yes. I used to have a good writing routine around my day job. But something I've recently found is that I've had lots more extra time, but that's not necessarily a good thing. I feel like the more time you have, the more you're going to think, well, I've got all this time, I can put it off and do it later. And no, don't fall into that trap.
Right. Having more time makes it so much easier to procrastinate because there's no immediate deadline of saying I only have an hour to write as much as I can, versus now we have, okay, I have the whole rest of the day to write, so I can push it off until after dinner. And then after dinner comes, and then you forget, or something happens and life gets in the way, and then you end up not writing.
Oh, I'm the queen of procrastination. But somehow I managed to get these books written.
Yeah. I'm still working on that part. I may be the princess to your queen, because I'm quite good at procrastinating myself. So, well, that we definitely want to encourage anybody who's watching this video to not procrastinate and to go write, and to write every day, even if you are inspired or not. And I thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. And people can find your first book on Amazon, correct?
Yes, Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, paperback wide.
Gotcha. And do you have a release date for your second book, or are we still just working in progress? Working in
Um,
progress.
I'm hoping I'm hoping September. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, but it's raining now. Yeah, I'm hoping September. So fingers crossed if I don't procrastinate too much.
All right. Well, hopefully September we'll see your second book. And I thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
And you. Bye bye.
Bye.